So this is a risk integration strategy that you see on screen, and this is totally based off of the NIST framework, NIST RMF framework. So uh, in certain cases, or in probably in cases wherein there are a lot of there are a few offices across geographies and they are operating across geographies, they would have multiple layer of the risk assessment. So the risk assessment not only happens at a cyber level, it also happens on an operational level, financial level, right? On a project level as well. So it could really happen at any level, but cyber would be a part of it. So there's something called ERM, which is your enterprise risk management, and that happens on a enterprise level. So if you see on the diagram, there are three levels. So level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is over the entire enterprise. It's location agnostic, it's team agnostic, and it would be applicable across the organization. The second one is on an organization level, which could be either location specific, it could be team specific, it could really be an entity specific operating into a certain region or operating into a um, certain business unit, right? It really could be that. And the third one, the last one, is really on the system level, which we are largely speaking on right now, right? So from the NIST, and this is how more or less the companies would also adopt to in an ideal case scenario. It could really differ from company to company and the location that they are operating into, if they are obligated to comply with some of the local risk management frameworks from a legal perspective and from a regulatory perspective. In those cases, definitely the situations would be much different than you would see here. But in an ideal case scenario, on an enterprise level, which is really the level 1, the company or the business would define an enterprise mission, goals, and objective. And these are the set of specific documents signed off um, by the board of directors, and it would be published across the whole enterprise. From a level 1 perspective, the executive would really be defining the risk appetite statements as well. And they would say that this is the risk appetite statement, and this is my risk tolerance statement, and I've got an example here. Here you go. So this is a typical, I would say, a risk appetite and risk tolerance statement. So from an appetite perspective, the statement could really say, and this is a very high level example, and this is based off real-time perspective as well. So the board of directors has decided that the enterprise has a low risk appetite for any cybersecurity exposure caused by inadequate access control or authentication process, right? That means the enterprise is really focused on the adequacy of the access control and the authentication mechanism and processes that have been adopted within the firm. So this becomes my risk appetite statement, which is really from a level 1 perspective, as in from an enterprise perspective, right? From a tolerance statement perspective, they would say something on similar lines, that there will always be some devices that do not yet support advanced authentication, right? There could always be a situation, something on similar lines, right? And this is why the tolerance definition would also kick in, right? But a 100% of the critical business applications must use MFA, multi-factor authentication, and this is my tolerance statement. And this is why this is where I was also speaking of the additional controls layer if my risk appetite happens to be breached, right? So in these cases, if I go back to if I go back here, now that the level 1, which is really the executives have defined the risk appetite and risk tolerance statement, it would go to the level 2. Level 2 is the organization level. It could be, again, it could be entity specific, I mean, within the entity itself. It could be location specific, it could be project specific, it could really mean anything, right? And they would be interpreting the appetite and the tolerance statement that we have here. And once they have interpreted that, they would define the risk tolerance statement between level 1 and level 2. They together would define the risk tolerance statement, because from an enterprise level, the risk tolerance could look completely different from a level to level. And that's why there should be a discussion between the enterprise and the organization level um, leaders to define the risk tolerance statement. In certain cases, you would see that there's someone called global CISO, right? And within that, they would have specific region CISO, say Singapore CISOs, right? They would have India CISO, right? They would have Australia CISO, and so on and so forth, right? So in these cases, all the regional level senior executives, doesn't matter if it's CISO, I'm just taking an example here. It doesn't matter which executive is that, they would be liaising with the level 1, which is really the global executive, and making sure that the definition of risk tolerance statement aligns with the expectation, right? And once it is confirmed, and once we know that, what is my risk tolerance statement, we know what is my risk appetite statement as well, it really goes to the level 3, which is on a system level, and which is where our role usually kicks in until we reach to the senior leadership positions, right? So on this level, we would be interpreting the risk tolerance statement that they have set, and we will go ahead with the standard risk scenarios, right? I mean, standard risk management process that we have already spoken about, right? Identifying the risk scenarios, assessing the likelihood and the impact, and whether or not the risk is within the tolerance. If it is not, can it be brought within the tolerance? If yes, then it goes with apply the risk mitigation strategy, or the transfer strategy. I mean, the risk mitigation strategy as a whole, the 4 risk mitigation strategies that we spoke of, right? And if it is not, then do we need to redefine the tolerance statement altogether, or do we need to define the tolerance controls, the controls to meet the tolerance requirement, right? And the entire process of your risk management process would be applicable from here to here. This is the risk assessment process that we would be conducting. Once we have done that, we will be updating the cybersecurity risk register, and subsequently the other registers as well. Since we are speaking of specifically related to cybersecurity, it's mentioned cyber here. Otherwise, it would be all your risk registers, including your financial operations, if there's a project or product deployment, or whatever it may be, right? And once we have updated the cybersecurity risk register, and this is PO, so this is POA and M. This is nothing but your plan of action and milestone. So once we have updated this register here, cybersecurity register and plan of action and milestones, it would be aggregated with the level 2 register. So in certain scenarios, there could be a situation wherein the risk register between level 3 and level 2, which is really on a system level and organization level, could be the same. Or in few cases, which is much more matured, I wouldn't say matured, I would say operating on a much larger scale than other companies, right? In those cases, the risk register on level 3 and level 2 would be completely different. And in those cases, the risk register from the level 3 would be aggregated with the level 2 risk register, and then ultimately it would be integrated with the overall enterprise cybersecurity risk register. And the overall enterprise level cybersecurity risk register would be not as detailed as we would be doing at a ground level. It would be on a much higher level, saying that my risk appetite statement is blah, my risk tolerance statement is blah, and the final risk register that we have received from our level 2 and level 1 meets with my risk tolerance and risk appetite statement, and that would be all. And it would be referred to the other documents, which is from the level 2 or level 3. In few cases, say that we have done our assessment on the ground, because from an enterprise level, or probably from an executive level, they would not have a very detailed idea as to whatever I am defining as a risk appetite statement, or as a risk tolerance statement, those statements may or may not be true when we actually start implementing the controls, when we actually go ahead and start identifying the risk, and then we realize, I guess, the tolerance statement itself needs to be amended, right? So in those cases, the recommendation would be going through to the level one, be it enterprise level or organization level. There would be a recommendation going in that we really need to review the enterprise risks and recommend adjustments to the risk appetite statements, that this is something not practical at the moment, and we really cannot meet probably for the next 2 to 4 years, and henceforth we would really need to amend the, or reiterate the risk appetite and risk tolerance statements. So risk tolerance statements would not largely be amended, because that is something, if we breach that, then definitely the impact is going to be much higher. But at least from the risk appetite perspective, it may or may not be amended on a periodic basis. Usually it doesn't happen, but if it really needs to be, then the risk appetite statement is something that can be amended. So this is how the overall risk management framework from a level 2 and level 3 perspective, which is really again your organization level and your system level, would be integrating with your overall enterprise risk management framework. So and this is something applicable to organization which is of a much larger scale. They have got multiple offices across geographies and across locations. And if such situation arises, then definitely they would be going ahead with the enterprise level, organization level, and system level risk assessments. So yeah, that's pretty much it from the risk integration.